Here's part 4 of our conversation with flamenco guitarist Jesse Cook. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Canada. Biggest influence on guitar? Who's your biggest?
I'm going to actually say the guitar trio, which was Paco de Lucia, Al Di Meola, and John McLaughlin. They did an album called Friday Night in San Francisco, which lived on my turntable back when that's how you listen to music for years. And I was just trying to lift those solos, figure out what those guys were doing. I still do. It just a remarkable recording, a live performance of 3 just ridiculously good guitarists, and it was a huge influence on, especially the teenage me, the testosterone-filled 16-year-old version of me.
Did you ever listen to like Mahavishnu Orchestra or anything like that? Did you ever listen?
A bit, but it was a bit more wanky. It's funny too, because I've gotten into world music in the end, but I at that time I just loved the speed, the ridiculous pyrotechnics and blazing runs they would play.
What artists do you listen to that would surprise your fans the most?
I'm going to say Blackpink.
Oh.
Yeah. Over the summer, my daughter introduced me to Blackpink, and most of what they do, I have to admit, is I'm clearly not the intended audience, and it's not really my thing, but there's a few songs they do that are insanely good. One is Boombayah. Let's Kill This Love is another one. What's the other one that I really like? Do, which you'll have to look that one up. But it's crazy, because it's like trap music. There's elements of world music thrown in there. Like there's kind of interesting little world music motifs and instruments, and then they're just like going like it's. And I spent a bit of time listening to it. I was just really enjoying it and loving the production and everything. And then I went and watched one of the videos, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't even look at this. They're like little tiny children." It's so clear that I'm not the audience that they are hoping to get. But musically, there were a few of those songs that I thought were great.
So you listen to any others? Obviously, your kids can introduce you to stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I listen to all sorts of music. I love pop music, but I also love all sorts of weird world music artists, and music is music. I love a lot of classic music, and it's interesting to me, that we just came back. We're lucky that we have a place up in the country, and we can actually bring our groceries right from home, go up there, and not see anybody, and come back. So it's fantastic. And on the way back, we're with the family, we're all running Spotify, and in fact, there is something about Spotify that allows you to listen to music of any age. You're not like in the old days, you had to have those records to play them. You know what I mean? So, if you're 18 or whatever, you're not, unless you're a serious jazz kid, you're not going to go buy a Count Basie record or something. But now on Spotify, you go, oh, let's check out some Count Basie, or, Miles Davis or Duke Ellington or Blackpink or, whatever the latest thing that you're interested in. And it's, you could play The Weeknd, and you could play music from the 80s and all these different periods, and you can kind of listen to them side by side, and you go, oh, well, we lost this. We lost harmony. We lost, sort of non-quantized music. But we also
lost the bridge. We lost the bridge. It's a rapper now. The bridge.
Yeah. Exactly.
Your parents split up. You come to Canada, and you'd been all over the place. I mean, Barcelona and France, and what did that young Jesse Cook? What was your first impression when you got here? Had you been here before? Is that?
No, I'd never been to Canada. Now this is something where I need to ask my mom whether she brought us as babies. The part of the story that I think not everybody realizes, that my parents were Canadian, so they grew up in Canada. My dad grew up in Toronto. My mom grew up in Montreal. They met at college. They went to Bishop's. And then in their early 20s, they went off to Europe. My mom was a journalist in London, and my dad was a fashion photographer in Paris. And they both ended up living in Paris, and, kind of rekindling their love. And my sister and I came along during that period. And then things got complicated, and they went their separate ways. And my mom, we moved to Barcelona, we moved around, we did a few more years in Europe. And then my mom realized she could get a job. She had a friend in Toronto who was working at the CBC, and she said, I think we can get you a job here. And so we moved to Canada. So for my mom, we were returning to Canada. For my sister and I, it was,
Right.
you know, in theory, we were Canadian, but we'd just never been here before. For both my sister and I think it was a big shock. You know, France, especially when you're for kids, French people love kids, little kids. They dress them up in these crazy outfits, you know, like a little sailor boy going to school, you know, and they give them treats. Anytime you go into a store, somebody's putting a treat in your mouth, you know, and you come to Canada, and Canada was much more modern at that time and tougher. Like, whoa, you know, suddenly there's bullies and gangs and you know, my mom sends me to school in the little sailor boy outfit, and oh my God, guess who got beat up that day? You know what I mean? It was a rough transition. But we, you know, the guitar thing had always sort of been something I was crazy about. And luckily, one of the best things about moving to Canada was that my mom happened to bump into Ellie Kasner, who was, I don't know if he was the chairman of the Guitar Association of Canada yet. Later, he became the head of the guitar department at U of T and chairman of the Guitar Association of Canada. He was a very sort of important figure in Canadian classical guitar, and he had an academy that since he passed away a few years ago, there's really nothing like that left in Canada. But at that time, you could go to one place where the whole building was full of guitar teachers, flamenco guitar teachers, classical guitar teachers at different levels, and some that were very sort of great teachers. Leona Boyd went there. I went there. And so I started at 6. My mom bumped into Ellie, and Ellie said, "Yes, bring him to my school. I'll teach him." You know, and I sort of started. Actually, I started with some of the lower teachers, and one of the first teachers I had happened to be a flamenco teacher. So, you know, although I loved flamenco music because of my mom's records, the first pieces I played were actually flamenco palos, which is kind of, in hindsight, remarkable to be in Canada. It just happened to, you know, your first teacher. Most people who were teaching guitar in Canada at that time, I imagine, were teaching the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and that kind of thing. So it ended up being this odd thing that has sort of permeated my life. And then the next odd thing was my dad, who, you know, his is another complex story, but went on to Austria, became a filmmaker, retired to Arles in the south of France, and happened to buy a house next door to Nicolas Reyes, who was the lead singer of the Gypsy Kings. And they weren't the famous worldwide Gypsy Kings at that time, they're a local band. And so I'm visiting my dad in the summers, and, you know, all these gypsy kids in the street playing the guitar that way. And I'm just hooked on it, right? And it's like this conspiracy, this world conspiracy to make me love this kind of music. It just kept passing through my life, and I kept going, man, I love that. So here I am, you know, 56 years, or it's not that much later, whatever that is, 30 years later, 40 years later, and this is what I do.